Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into the origins of Bitcoin, but maybe not just the tech side. We're looking at it as, well, a direct political statement, a reaction. Yeah. If you really want to grasp why Bitcoin even exists, you have to rewind to 2008, to a massive, massive failure of trust in the whole system.
That's absolutely right. Our sources really hammer this home. Bitcoin wasn't just some, clever invention looking for a use case. It was engineered cryptographically as a direct answer to that moment the global financial system just fell apart. So our mission today is to unpack that, to show you the why that's literally baked into the code.
And you mentioned there's proof, like actual proof.
Oh, yeah. There's a specific time-stamped political headline that Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator, embedded right into the very first block. The Genesis block is kind of the smoking gun.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Right. So before the solution, the problem, 2008. To understand the defiance, you have to feel the catastrophe, right? The sources paint a picture of just recklessness, greed, a total breakdown of checks and balances.
It really kicked off in the mortgage market. I mean, lenders were practically encouraged to issue these subprime loans to people who, frankly, had little chance of paying them back. You had the infamous ninja loans.
Ninja loans.
Yeah. No income, no job, no assets. It sounds almost comical now, but it was real.
Just paper shuffling. But the sources say the real poison wasn't just the bad loans themselves, was it? It was Wall Street's alchemy.
Exactly. They bundled these toxic loans together, transformed them into these incredibly complex, murky products, mortgage-backed securities, CDOs, collateralized debt obligations.
And slapped AAA ratings on them.
Yeah, the rating agencies, the supposed watchdogs, just waved them through. So this hidden risk, it just spread like wildfire through the entire global financial system. Nobody really knew what was inside these things.
Until the music stopped, the housing market turned, and suddenly, boom.
Lehman Brothers, September 15th, 2008. The biggest bankruptcy in U.S. history. But it wasn't just one bank failing.
No, it was the trust, wasn't it? The whole system relies on banks lending to each other, day in, day out. And suddenly, nobody trusted anybody.
Froze solid. The lifeblood of capitalism just stopped flowing because the trust had completely evaporated.
And then came the response, the bailouts. TARP, $700 billion. Quantitative easing followed.
Right, QE. Years of it. And look, it arguably saved the system from total collapse, but it left this deep, deep philosophical wound.
That's the core of it, I think. The sources really stress this point, the public footing the bill to save the very institutions whose recklessness caused the crisis.
While the executives who ran them faced, well, basically no consequences, no jail time for the architects of the meltdown.
So the message seemed to be centralized institutions, governments, banks. They could fail spectacularly, they could be corruptible, but they were too big to fail. The public bears the cost, the structure stays the same.
And that sense of betrayal, that specific failure of trust, that's the fertile ground where Bitcoin was planted.
Which makes the timing just incredible. Literally weeks after Lehman collapsed, October 31st, 2008, Halloween. This paper appears online, posted by someone calling themselves Satoshi Nakamoto.
Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. And it's not just a technical proposal, it reads like a direct response, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Addressing the key failures of 2008 head on.
Okay, so failure number one, trust. The whole system needed trusted intermediaries, banks, regulators, and they failed. What was Satoshi's answer?
Eliminate the need for trust in people or institutions. Replace it with cryptographic proof. The rules are enforced by code, by mathematics, and by a decentralized consensus, not by fallible executives in a boardroom.
Okay, failure two. Monetary policy. Post-crisis, governments just started printing money, essentially. QE, inflating the supply.
Right, debasing the currency, critics would say. Satoshi's design, our hard cap, absolutely fixed supply. Only 21 million Bitcoin will ever exist, period.
So inherently anti-inflationary by design, resistant to that kind of arbitrary expansion.
That was the goal. Now, you mentioned risks earlier, like deflation.
Yeah, a fixed supply isn't without its own economic debates, right? Hoarding, velocity of money.
Absolutely. It's a huge debate. But for Satoshi, it seems the risk of program scarcity, maybe even deflation, was preferable to the historical certainty of, well, fiat currency debasement. The goal was sovereign money, peer-to-peer cash you control. That can't be easily seized, censored, or inflated away by some central authority.
And Satoshi actually wrote about this, didn't they, in the white paper itself? It's quite pointed.
It really is. The quote nails it. The root problem with conventional currency is all the trust that is required to make it work. The central bank must be trusted not to debase the currency, but the history of fiat currencies is full of breaches of that trust. It's a direct shot.
Wow. Okay, so the white paper lays out the philosophy, but then comes January 3rd, 2009. The network goes live, and this is where we get that time-stamped proof you mentioned.
This is the smoking gun. Block 0. The Genesis block, the very first block mine. Embedded in its code permanently, immutably, is a message. Not code, not math. A headline.
From the news that day.
From the Times of London, dated that exact day. The Times, 03 Jan 2009 Chancellor, on brink of second bailout for banks.
Whoa, okay, that's pretty explicit.
It's the mission statement, etched in digital stone. This thing was born from the ashes of the bailouts. Clear as day.
Okay, so the why is clear. Anger at the system, distrust of centralization. But how? How did Satoshi solve that technical puzzle, the double spending problem? How do you stop someone copying digital money without a bank?
That's the technical miracle, really. Think about it. If I have a digital file, say an MP3, I can copy it endlessly. If digital cash is just a file, what stops me sending the same digital dollar to you and then sending it to someone else?
Right, it needs scarcity. Traditionally, the bank's central ledger is what ensures I only spend it once. They debit my account, credit yours.
Exactly. Satoshi needed to achieve that same certainty, that finality, without a central authority. And the solution is, well, it's multi-layered. Genius, really.
Okay, break it down for us.
Component 1. Proof of work. POW. This is what secures the network, what prevents cheating. You have specialized computers, miners, competing to solve these really hard, computationally intensive math puzzles.
And solving the puzzle gives them the right
To validate a block of recent transactions and add it to the chain. But the key is the work. It costs real energy, real electricity, real computing power to solve that puzzle.
Ah, so cheating would mean redoing all that work plus outcomputing the rest of the network.
Precisely. It makes attacking the network incredibly expensive. Economically irrational, basically. The cost of the proof via energy expenditure secures the ledger's integrity.
Okay, so proof of work validates transactions. Then what happens?
Get bundled into a block. And this leads to component 2, the blockchain. Each new validated block is cryptographically linked, chained to the one before it using something called a hash.
Creating a chain of blocks, a blockchain, an unbroken history.
An unbroken, immutable history of every single transaction, stretching all the way back to that Genesis block with the headline in it. Tamper-proof. Once a block is deep in the chain, changing it is practically impossible.
And this ledger, this chain,
Yeah.
it doesn't live in one place, right? That's the key.
Component 3. Decentralization, that's the magic. The blockchain isn't stored on JP Morgan's server. It's held, copied, and verified by thousands of independent computers, nodes all over the world.
So no single point of failure, no central entity to corrupt, coerce, or shut down.
Exactly. The rules are baked into the software everyone runs. Trust is shifted from fallible institutions to verifiable code and mathematics.
So for you listening, that's the core takeaway. Bitcoin solved double spending without needing a bank. It created a system for digital truth, maintained by a decentralized network.
And, this didn't just spring out of nowhere in 2008. The ideas behind it, the philosophy, it had been brewing for decades.
The cypherpunks, right?
Yeah, this group of cryptographers, activists, programmers, they believed way back in the 90s that privacy and freedom in the digital age wouldn't come from laws. It had to come from cryptography, from code.
Their motto was cypherpunks write code. Don't just complain about the system, build an alternative.
And Bitcoin is arguably the ultimate expression of that ethos. Build the tools for freedom yourself.
Which brings us to the mystery, the paradox. Satoshi, the architect. They guided the project for maybe 2 years and then just vanished.
Poof, gone. Around late 2010, early 2011, just walked away. Email stopped, forum posts stopped, and they supposedly held around 1 million Bitcoin. Never touched.
That act itself is almost as significant as the invention, isn't it, for a system preaching decentralization?
A visible leader is a liability, a single point of failure. Imagine the pressure, the lawsuits, the government attention if Satoshi had remained known.
They could be leaned on, co-opted.
Or worse. By disappearing, by becoming this ghost, Satoshi performed maybe the final necessary act to truly embed that trustless, decentralized ideal. The creator had to vanish for the creation to thrive on its own terms.
Incredible. But despite these, world-changing ambitions, the very beginning was, well, kind of weird. It involved pizza.
Oh, Bitcoin Pizza Day, May 22nd, 2010. For ages, Bitcoin had no real-world value. It was just traded between hobbyists online.
So how did it get its first price tag?
A programmer, Laszlo Hanyecz, posted on a forum saying he'd pay 10,000 Bitcoin for 2 pizzas. Delivered.
10,000 Bitcoin?
Yep. Someone in the UK actually took him up on it, ordered the pizzas for him from Papa John's, paid about $40 cash for them, and Laszlo sent him the 10,000 BTC.
That has to be the most expensive pizza order in history looking back.
By a long shot. Hundreds of millions of dollars at later prices. But that mundane transaction, that was it. The moment Bitcoin crossed the barrier from digital curiosity to something with actual transferable economic value.
Amazing. So the network grows, value emerges, but then comes conflict. Even in a trustless system, humans disagree, right? The scaling wars.
Yeah, roughly 2015 to 2017. And it was fierce. The whole debate boiled down to one technical parameter, the block size limit. Satoshi had initially set it at 1 megabyte.
Which limits how many transactions can fit into each block, so it affects speed and fees.
Exactly. But it wasn't just a technical debate. It was deeply philosophical. You had the small blockers.
They argued the 1 MB limit was crucial for decentralization.
Yes. Keep blocks small. Keep the cost of running a full verifying node low so anyone could participate. Prevent it from becoming centralized in huge data centers owned by corporations. They saw Bitcoin as digital gold secure settlement, not necessarily fast coffee payments.
And the big blockers.
They wanted bigger blocks, more capacity, faster speeds, lower fees, aiming for mass adoption, more like a Visa-style payment network. Efficiency was their priority.
So decentralization versus efficiency, basically. How did it shake out?
The core community, through node operators and miners essentially, sided with the small block vision. They prioritized maximum decentralization and censorship resistance above all else. The main Bitcoin network kept the small blocks.
And the big blockers?
They weren't happy. They initiated a hard fork, splitting the chain and creating their own version, Bitcoin Cash, with much larger blocks. That happened in 2017.
So the original chain chose its path, which leads us neatly to the grand irony of the whole story, doesn't it?
It really does. For years, the legacy financial system, the banks, the institutions bailed out in 2008. They mocked Bitcoin, called it rat poison squared, a fraud. Jamie Dimon at JP Morgan was famously critical.
Calling it a fraud in 2017, I remember that.
But then, something shifted, especially after the huge money printing response to COVID-19 in 2020 and onwards.
Fears of inflation came roaring back.
Exactly. And suddenly, institutions started looking at Bitcoin differently, a scarce, non-sovereign asset outside the traditional system. Maybe it wasn't so crazy after all.
And now, we have those same institutions. JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, BlackRock, falling over themselves to offer Bitcoin products, ETFs, custody.
They've wrapped the anti-establishment rebel in a suit and tie, offering access to the very thing created in opposition to them. The irony is just staggering.
So wrapping this up for you, our listener, what does it all mean? Bitcoin emerged from 2008 offering specific solutions, didn't it?
Absolutely. 3 key things. 1, a fixed supply to counter arbitrary inflation. 2, decentralization to counter centralized points of failure and control. And 3, transparency and open verifiable ledger to counter the opacity that hid all that risk back in '08.
It's still, as you said, a ghost story. The ghost of 2008 haunting the system, and the necessary ghost of Satoshi ensuring no single leader.
Right. The core historical purpose, you could argue, was to give people an option, an exit ramp from a centralized system that proved deeply flawed, a hedge against human error, greed, and institutional failure.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to ponder. What happens now? When the system, built to challenge and potentially dismantle centralized power, gets absorbed, embraced, and even promoted by that very power, does the original philosophical mission survive? Or does the irony just keep deepening, something to mull over?